Hello and welcome to the Cambridge Theatre here in London. And as Matilda the Musical embarks on a major new tour, I'm delighted to say that we're joined by the co-creators of the show, Tim Minchin, who wrote the music and the lyrics, and Dennis Kelly, who wrote the script. Lovely to have you with us.
Hi, that was a really good introduction. I wouldn't be able to do that. I'd be fumbling. And Dennis can barely speak.
Look, it's 14 years since Matilda the Musical first opened at the Royal Shakespeare Company's Courtyard Theatre. Since then, it has been seen by 12 million people around the world.
Wow, is that right?
Looking back, could you have envisaged it would be the huge success that it's gone on to be?
Dennis,
We knew. We definitely.
Dennis
we
thought
had
10
no
mil.
idea.
Yeah, I reckon 10 mil.
If I can hit 5 mil, I'll be happy. No. I mean, we didn't know for a minute. Like, you know, we were doing a Christmas show at the RSC. You know what I mean? And so I don't think we really had a view of it being much more than. I think you and Matthew probably had a wiser thought about. You know, this could have a West End life, but because
Matthew Walsh is
the director, but because I mean, I was writing. My day job is to write grimy little plays that upset people. You know what I mean? And like, so
you do
me
it so beautifully.
I was upset so many people. Not quite 12 million, but you know, a fair amount.
But yeah, it was just one of the projects you were working on.
But also, I didn't have context for things going for that long. But I don't think any of us could have foreseen it lasting this long.
No, and I don't know when it crossed my mind that it could transfer. I certainly didn't say yes to the job with that in mind. I just thought working at the Royal Shakespeare Company and working with old mate grimy little plays would be good. And I think one of the reasons it's a nice piece of theatre is we didn't get ahead of ourselves. We were just trying to make it a lovely little jewel for Stratford upon Avon, and it is, as Dennis says, it was a Christmas show, so we wanted to put that warmth into it. And and then when it transferred, well, once it was up in Stratford, we all went, oh, this might be a keeper. Like, the reactions were so strong. And at that point, I started dreaming of a West End transfer, but I don't know. I don't think I'm a bit more like Dennis. I don't think I knew that a musical like this could run that.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel real to have a show like that. So it remains weird. I haven't been in London for a long time, and I just walked up to the roundabout and saw the theatre, and it's still just, I can't quite believe it's our building, really, isn't it? I mean, it's been here for so long.
I've got some more stats for you. Yeah. So it's been seen by more, let me get this right. It's been
I'm going to guess 12 million people.
Yeah, that as well. It's been seen in more than 100 cities around the globe.
That's a
and
lot.
It's won 100 awards, international awards. So that led me to wonder, why do you think it's been a success both with audiences in the UK but internationally as well?
I think it's a universal story. I mean, we love a story of a protagonist with a heart of gold who is kept down and rises up against the meanies. I mean, obviously Harry Potter, which came not that long after this story, is very similar. Someone who's basically kept in an attic but is brilliant and living with adults who are fools. But everything from Frodo Baggins onwards, we feel like in the world that we are people who strive to be good and to vanquish our oppressors, and a little miracle kid who's got a brain the size of a planet but is a 4 foot tall girl. I don't know why that would be very culturally specific. I mean, I think it's just universally lovely.
Yeah, I think everything Tim's just said is true, but I also, you know, it is the songs. Like, I mean, the thing, and I think I'd never realised it was the songs for the first 10 years. I hate to say it because I'm complimenting him, but and I spent the last 14 years trying not to do that. But like, it's the I've got a little girl now, and I'm amazed at the amount of parents that tell me that who haven't seen the show but are listening to the songs in their car with their kids. And I always feel I should apologise because like you listen to them over and over again, you know. But like, I think the fact is that's what brings people in from all over the world. And what is unusual about our musical is that you've got a consistently good bunch of songs. There's so many musicals, you think, oh, it's a great song. And then you actually listen to the musical, you think, that's the only good song. The rest of them are all really boring. But we've got so many we have got loads of good songs, and it's just got a lot of life into them. I think that really makes a difference, you know.
Is your head growing?
Well, my head's at full size. Yeah, I think, and the interesting thing about songs in musicals is I think people talk as if there are iconic, catchy songs and then not iconic, catchy songs, but actually songs grow iconic. So it seems obvious now that all the kids all over the world sing When I Grow Up and Revolting Children and Naughty and Loud and Quiet, and this seems like, well, of course they sing them. They're big, solid, iconic songs. But when it first came out, one of the show was incredibly raved about critically, but quite often, like in quite a few of the reviews, even the really good ones, they're like, the songs are amazing. There's no earworms or bangers, but you know, I didn't come out humming. And now you just think, that was a
criticism. I remember that being a bit of a criticism. They're really great, but there's no, you know, and you sort of now 14 years later, that doesn't seem like the case. But it's the same. It's the same with the idea of doing the show. Like, you know, people look at it now and go, oh, that was bound to be a success. Like doing Matilda, it's big. Roald Dahl was bound to be a success. But at the time when we were doing it, it wasn't, you know, Roald Dahl was amazing. But it wasn't like there was a whole bunch of other Roald Dahl.
Adapting Dahl was sort of famously hard, right? There'd been a lot of films that the Dahls
and there weren't really plays, or there were plays that were adapted, Dahl plays that were adapted, but they weren't sort of big
they were
successes,
like the Giraffe,
you know.
the Pelly and Me, like little kid shows.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's like you look all this stuff, and you know, there'd be times where we were in the rehearsals and those songs come in, and you don't know that they're going to go on to be great songs. You know, I remember hearing When I Grow Up for the first time, and I loved it as a song. I thought it was great, but I wasn't sure it fitted in the show, and it wasn't until
it still doesn't.
It actually sort of moved around a bit. Like it was a move, and it wasn't until you found exactly the right place that you went, that's it, that works just there, you know. So it's odd. With hindsight, you look at these things and you go, oh well, that does work, but it kind of works because it has worked.
That leads me on to ask, how did you two actually work together? Because you were approached by the Royal Shakespeare Company to see if you were interested in the story. Here are you writing the music, you're writing the script. How did you collaborate?
We avoided each other for quite a long time. We did actually, because Dennis had, as Dennis said, he's a playwright, and so he's always got a few projects on the go. And Dennis had been working on the adaptation of Matilda into a stage play, basically, with his idea of where songs might be for 18 months or 2 years, hadn't you?
Yeah, well, it was a musical, but it was the same. It's largely, if you look at that draft, you'll see what you see on stage here, but just this is better now. It's been re-workshopped and made better, but it is largely...
When Matthew first pitched the idea of Matilda the musical, I was like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. It's actually an idea I had myself. And I thought, I know how to write in a Dahlian way because it's a very, very big part of my childhood. But I did think it's not an easy 2-hour show. It's sort of episodic, and then everything changes, and it's at home, and then it's at school. It's not really a classic story arc. And then I read the script and I went, oh, well, the hard work's been done. But then I came on board and I was doing my thing over here. I was like on the road to I'm on my way to big venues. Like I was really, my life was changing very fast with my solo stuff. And I sort of thought, oh, he seems like a weird guy and he's obviously very clever, but I don't want to get up in his grill and I don't need him up in mine. I'm just going to go and write songs. And I wrote most of the songs for Matilda in a single 6-week period in 2009. And then there was a good year of us I immediately loved him and found him funny, but it felt a bit like I'm pulling this way and he's pulling this way, and we're both capable of making each other laugh, but we could have a bit of a Barney about
but also that's because you're like, you know, my job is to protect the script and your job is to protect the songs, and there was too much of both in a way, and actually we had to find a way of being able to accommodate each other.
There was a time you and I went to Stratford.
Matthew made us do it.
Yeah, we sort of went to Stratford together, and there was just a time in a pub somewhere, and I think we even acknowledged, I was just like, oh, we just need to do more of this. We need to not have everyone around us all the time, but we also don't need to be just us. We need to just, Dennis and I need to just be our own little micro team within the team. And
Yeah.
it's just, I'm like, oh yeah, we just need to like sit in pubs more instead of sort of theorizing. And that was just,
I
and from
remember
then
that.
on, it
That's
was just
right.
like,
That was a key sort of
we
moment.
always liked each other, but that's when I was like, oh, no, we're mates now. We'll be fine. We'll figure this out. And then we had a terrible falling out and now we don't speak.
As is obvious. Dennis, how did you get inside the head of this 5-year-old with these terrible parents who love telly and hate books?
I'll be honest, I didn't find it that difficult because I think Dahl gives you so much. Like Dahl gives you what Dahl gives you. This is where Dahl adaptations are difficult. Dahl weirdly doesn't give you a good story. That sounds terrible. I just said Dahl doesn't give you a good story, but he doesn't give you a good story for stage and often for film as well, because the way he tells stories is like, you know, he'll sort of really revel in these little moments, but like a
Sort of
show,
vignettes of character.
it's episodic. But what he gives you, so plot wise, you've got a real problem and stuff like, you know, creating a story that can be difficult. But what he does give you in spades is all this character. He just gives you all this and this colour and this sort of like this sort of world that is really is sort of the stuff that makes it. So getting into the sort of feeling of Dahl or the characters, it never ever bothered me. Like it was really, I don't think it ever bothered you, did it? You just go for it. The difficult stuff was the more mechanical stuff, which is to sort of create a story that kind of, because you can't just like do nice Dahl things on stage for an hour and 2 hours. You actually got to create a story that kind of feels satisfying and has twists and turns, you know. And you also got to do it without sort of resorting to kind of like, you know, cliched sort of like story mechanics, because Dahl don't work like that. You can't just go, oh, in the third act it's got to do this and this and this. The moment you start applying these sort of, I hate that sort of formulaic kind of stuff, it will fall to pieces because it's too sort of messy for that, you know.
Tim, and it may sound in some ways like a daft question, given I've said that 12 million people have seen this around the world, but there will be some people who perhaps haven't seen Matilda the musical. What can they expect?
I think one thing about Matilda is it's a proper old school musical. You know, the form of musical theatre that Dennis and I engaged in is that you're writing songs that absolutely emotionally support the story. And as such, it is a really emotionally satisfying experience. So even though it's a little kid and it's a children's story, the reason Matilda's been so successful is adults and children equally love it. And they actually have parallel but really different emotional experiences. Because looking at a child struggling and being oppressed and being bullied is very different when you're an adult. It hurts, you know, and it partly hurts because you're remembering being a child yourself and how hard it was. And you're also thinking, oh, I've forgotten how to be a child. Or, you know, adults have a real sense that they're not innocent anymore, or they don't play anymore. And so adults are having this experience, and adults tend to cry in Matilda because of that. Kids are just like, want to smash the ceiling out because it's also like, teachers are dumb and like we can throw aeroplanes, and it's got this rejoicing and this anarchic spirit that kids love, where the little kid gets to kick ass, and parents have this nostalgic feeling. But because I think it's a proper old school musical where the songs are written to support the emotional beats of the story, I think people walk out feeling really whole, you know, and that's what good storytelling does. It makes you want to be a better person in the world and stuff. So, I mean, that's quite grand, but I do think that's what good theatre does. And because this show was worked on with such passion for so long by not just Dennis and I, but some of the best theatre creators on the planet, you know, in lighting and design and choreography and music supervision and directing and the whole team, it's so passionately maintained. It was passionately created and it's passionately maintained. So it's got this, it's a jewel, you know. I'm incredibly proud of it, obviously, and I really do believe it is loved because it has this universality.
Why do you think it's so loved? And what can audiences expect from your point of view, Dennis?
It's hard to say why it's loved. I mean, I do think that's right what you said. I think like the fact that do you know what? This is going to sound odd, but like I do think a lot of shows that I've seen are cynical. And by that, I think people are doing them for, I don't think it's just money. I think people do things for success, and they do things because they want to have a big success, or they want to have and I just don't think there was never any cynicism in it. Like the arguments we had weren't about sort of like,
how do we sell more tickets?
Yeah, they weren't about, they're not going to like this in Des Moines. You know what I mean? We weren't worried about things like that. The arguments we had were about the characters and about what makes it good, just like that. I think it does have, and I think, it's still got a lack of cynicism in a way, you know what I mean? It's, even though it's been going on for so long, I feel like every time I see it, there's always a moment where I get really emotional, and I've seen it so many times. Like I've seen it, I find it really hard to watch because I have seen it so many times, but there'll always be a moment where it just sneaks up on me and just sort of grabs me, because, and I think it's especially when you're dealing with kids, like, I think cynicism sooner or later will get sniffed out. Sooner or later, I mean, you can coast on that for quite a while, that sneaky little kind of like, thing that it's like, oh, aren't kids amazing? Aren't they clever? But when you get right down to it, if you've got cynicism in the heart of it, that's a really abstract way of saying. Yeah. Can I say the songs? Or a laugh. People are gonna. It's got a lot of laughs in it, and it's got a lot of silliness, which is good.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. It's silly and funny and joyous, but has a lot of heart. And I think with it, Dennis and I have both been making stuff for 30 years or so, and it doesn't always work. Sometimes you make something that's really sort of commercial and it works, and sometimes you make something full of heart and it doesn't. But as a rule, if you make something with heart, the audience feels it with their hearts. And when it all comes together, then that lives forever, It's almost a lyric. That was bad.
We've got to do it again. We've got to do this again, like a young person.
I'll use that as a cut point for a young person. I don't think so. I think that's like old people.
Now Matilda the musical is embarking on this major tour. What does that mean to you?
The beautiful thing about the tour is it's not a like cheap and cheerful, like flat pack version, although we'd be proud of that as well. Like any version is good, but this is a proper, it loses no quality for being transportable. So I think that's the main thing we love about it.
Yeah, I think so. Being able to reach more people, and people that wouldn't get a chance to sort of see it. What I think is useful about a show like Matilda being on tour as well is that Matilda by its nature is quite a theatrical show. Like it was actually really difficult turning it into a film because the show is very theatrical, the songs are theatrical, and it was, we were sort of, it was about celebrate, when we'd find solutions to stuff that were like, I always think the Bruce Bogtrotter does this burp, and we found we were doing all sorts of things, so this magic where a balloon would do this and you do this, and in the end, all it is a light, and everyone does this, which is, and it looks brilliant, everyone's just sort of going, oh, it's a burp, and they follow the light. But actually that sort of lo-fi solution is very theatrical and it works brilliantly. So it's a very sort of, in some ways, it's quite a hi-fi, lo-fi theatrical show.
It is, yeah. It's crafty.
Yeah, and I think that is good because it's sort of it's rather than it being too shiny and too glitzy, and we're not kind of trying to dazzle you with how is that possible. It's actually more, it's more the sort of the craft of it, the art of it, I suppose.
There's shadow puppetry in it, and there's, and in the West End, the desks come out of the ground on hydraulic lifts, but on tour, they just sort of slide on in.
They look good like that, though. I think they're as good as hydraulic lifts.
They just like...
Because they make a dance out of it.
Yeah,
they make a nice dance out of it.
Suddenly, it's a classroom, but unlike here, where there's all this tech, you've watched all these cast members come on, and suddenly there's a classroom, and it's like, that's why theatre will never die, is because you can CGI something, and we're so, there's a dinosaur, there's an exploding planet. We've just become inoculated against awe. But when they're right there, there's people, and a minute ago we were in a library, and now we're outside in a playground, and now we're in a classroom, and it's just so, we love that. It is more like old school magic. The most magical moment, Matthew described this as magic, because there was moments where we were like, there's a bit where Matilda speaks Bulgarian, and like we were, I remember talking about, you're always looking for cuts and thinking, should we cut this bit? And he was going, that's magic. And I didn't really understand what he meant.
And it is actually, it's magic in the audience. What you're looking at a girl who is probably, could be as young as 9, or she looks like she's 5, and she's speaking fluent Bulgarian off the top of her head like this, and it just feels magic. You've had this entire show, and then she just does this. But it's a very lo-fi thing. It's not a big technical thing. It's not. And I think
just really, really making a child learn Bulgarian.
yeah, it's just she has to.
There's no shortcut.
She does actually speak fluent Bulgarian. It's really difficult to get those actors. But that sort of lo-fi theatrical solution is exciting, and it's exciting to take that out into the country, because it's a sort of it sort of talks about what theatre can be, and you're seeing people seeing this who might not have seen that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Now Matilda the musical is going on tour. Are you involved in any way?
It is sort of a sadness that this show goes on without me, because the reason Dennis and I do this job is because we fell in love with theatre when we were young, and the idea when this show first went on and I got to meet these kids and meet the cast is so much fun. And the idea that I don't get to, because I live in Australia now, I don't get to see this production very much and I don't get to be involved is a bit sad. But the show lives now, 100 cities. I mean, we can't be involved, and not just 100 cities, but 10,000 schools and classrooms, and it's not ours anymore. It's the world's, and that's a bit sad that I can't be involved. But it's also the most amazing thing.
Trite question, probably. What is your favourite moment in Matilda the musical?
In Matilda?
Yeah.
My favourite moment is, I think it's Quiet, when she goes up on the books, and then, because you could just hear a pin drop, I mean, I've got lots of little moments, like I like, lines like you could have heard a fly burp. I just like the P on it and
Kelly
things like that.
Lines, yeah.
I just like there's little lines that you like, but my favourite moment is Quiet. She goes up and the song's swirling and swirling and swirling, and then there's just this moment where she sort of, everything goes quiet. I remember the first time I heard it, I felt like Tim had made music out of silence, and I thought that was just really, really beautiful. Just a really beautiful thought,
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, it's an insight.
No, I thought my thought was beautiful. I didn't think it's... No.
Tim, what's your favourite?
I have exactly the same answer. Quiet is my favourite moment because Quiet was not one of the songs I wrote in that first 6 weeks. It was a hard-fought song, and it's slightly revolutionary, and it's musically interesting, and it's become a very meaningful song to me because it's become this sort of anthem for neurodivergent people. It's autistic people all over the world write to me about that song, sort of reflecting their experience of the world, which is really interesting. And so that's my favourite moment too, when you can hold a room of 1,000 people in an in-breath. But I also agree that there's something really interesting about Kelly and Dahl, like Dennis's capacity to inhabit a Dahlian universe, and yet it's Kellyan. It's not, you could have heard a fly burp, or the way she breathlessly tells this story of the burning woman hurling through the air with dynamite in her hair over sharks and spiky objects, and all that language. It's proto-Dahlian, or it's like it's Dahlian in a way, but it's Dennis. It's so Dennis.
My favourite moment of
he's like a Dahl character. He's like,
I am, yeah, that's right, yeah. But my favourite moment of what I did was, was the moment where there's a moment when Matilda, the story gets really bad, and for a long time in the workshops, this was a bit of a problem. We knew the story had to go here, but it got really bad. I remember Matthew saying to me, the problem with this is it makes us cry. I was going, that's good. He's going, no, but it's going to make the kids cry, and that's bad, And it's because the woman has died. She like the escapologist's wife has died. And it was that line, yeah. And it wasn't in there for ages. And we were always thinking, how can we soften this? How can we soften it? And then instead of softening it, I got Matilda to suddenly go, and then things got worse. And then the entire audience just laughs.
Because they're so relieved.
Yeah, they're so relieved.
It's so dark. She goes, and she died. And then things got worse. And the whole audience has to laugh at that utter bleakness. And it releases it. It's a genius.
But it was for 2 or 3 years, it wasn't in there. And it really, we were always sort of like, can we do this? Because you can't sort of like have kids in the audience like cry and like, you know.
Years ago, adults like crying, kids don't.
No, that was Matthew that said
Yeah,
that.
right.
You know, but it was right. It was like, you know, and it's sort of I think it's, again, it was a hard fought thing. It was like, it seems like a really simple thing. Like, why didn't you think of this before, you idiot? But we didn't. Like, you know, and it wasn't until we thought of that it kind of made it work, you know.
We're running out of time. Just a very couple of quick fire questions, okay? When I grow up, one of the most famous songs in the musical, what did you want to be when you were little?
I think when I was really little, I wanted to be a farmer. I wanted to own a farm with my brother.
Dennis?
I think I wanted to be a king.
A farmer and a king. We'll take that. And then a final question. Matilda has a special power, doesn't she? She can move things just by thinking about them. If you could have a special power, what would it be?
I should have an answer for this because it comes up a bit.
Yeah,
I don't think telekinesis would be everything. I think
Dennis, have you got an answer while Tim's
Yeah,
thinking?
come on.
Not really. I think, I agree with telekinesis. Is like, well, I can just go over there and move it, can't I?
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's not that.
you can move things with your thoughts. You just have to
use your hand as well. You know,
first, you have to move this with your thoughts.
Yeah.
And then you can.
I think time travel. Clearly, it's got to be time travel.
Oh no, that's
Are you kidding?
stressful.
Dinosaurs,
Ugh.
Rome.
I don't
I mean,
want
you want to
dinosaur
see
in my
that,
life.
don't you? You want to see.
Dinosaurs
I mean,
are
don't bring
scary.
it back, but you go and have a quick peek and come back.
Yeah, but then
The
you get
future.
stuck there, and then you influence stuff,
You know,
and you end up like almost dating
Who's going to
your
win the
mum.
340? Like, you know, you put
Oh,
some money
yeah.
on, off you go.
Epsom.
Epsom.
I think I'd have the power to vanquish my enemies. No, I would have the power
To crush.
to crush. I don't want a superpower. They all. My brain just goes.
What about
That's too complicated.
How about super strength? No one ever says super strength. Say super strength.
super strength?
Yeah.
I want to be able to lift Dennis up and slam him on the ground.
Super strength. Such a stupid answer. If I would have said six.
Dennis Kelly, Tim Minchin, thank you both.
Thank you for having us.